We need to basically grow based on sanity, not vanity. You can have sanity numbers or vanity numbers. I really want to grow to these sanity numbers, things that are done in a way that's really, really healthy for the game, the project, the community, the ecosystem, and the assets involved.
Let's talk a little bit about growth. You talked about how traditionally you came from a Web3 background. This game, this product, from a Web3 background. But you're transitioning to go after a more Web2 native audience using user acquisition. Can you talk about what channels and tactics you're using to go after that Web2 audience, and what has the early success cases been?
Yeah, so one of our early theses when we came in here was where, Justin has an incredible background in high volume user acquisition, particularly for mobile games. And so we saw this as like, hey, if we could unlock the back part of the mullet, right? That we could build a really, really fun game that had healthy Web3 tokenomics and all that stuff, that we could just build a great game. And then we could make it so that it had the availability of every Web2 game in the world, that we could launch the Web2 playbook into a Web3 game and it could really change everything, right? And so for us, the Web2 playbook is exactly what you guys have been doing for Web2 games for decades, right? It's app stores, it's performance marketing, it's all these special things, everything from social media to app stores to specialized stores and other launchers and things like that, that if they can get you a player with XXP, you pay them X amount, and on deck stuff and all these things. I'm not the user acquisition pro, as you can tell. I'm much more the game design and community initiatives, not even necessarily like community marketing and stuff. And Justin heads up much more the user acquisition and marketing side. So he could talk more intelligently, and Warren, I know that you could too, to the things that we're using. But our whole thing was, though, if we could get the availability of a Web2 game, then we could launch that exact playbook for a Web3 game, and that's what we've been able to do.
Yeah, I think it's both like a blessing and a curse, but what I've generally observed, I'm curious, Corey, if you guys have felt the same, was Web3, it's very easy relatively to go from 0 to 1 to like launch a project and call it, depending on market conditions, your first 10,000 to 80,000 community members, all participating in different capacities. But that this can be done sometimes literally, I've seen cases where it was literally overnight. If a project is hyped enough to get that 5-figure community on Twitter and Discord. And sometimes this can give a bit of a false sense of confidence, but then you also just hit a hard ceiling just based on where adoption is at today. And what we see and what I really love about you guys is like, there's often like no plan what to do once that ceiling is hit. I'm just curious, in your own journey with Honeyland, have you seen that that's kind of the growth path of like, you had like the Web3 phase and felt like kind of nearing market saturation there, and then kind of transitioning your go-to-market focus and your user acquisition strategy beyond that to that broader but more mainstream audience?
Yeah, it's funny that virality in Web3 is far easier to accomplish, but like you said, the ceiling is far lower and the attention moves so much quicker, right? That like you constantly need to be refighting for that Web3 attention. And so we play all the Web3 games. We did a HXD summer sweepstakes for people who were staking. We've got a new staking program that we're going to be launching. We do ecosystem partnerships and collabs, and we're on Twitter Spaces. And so all these like ecosystem things that you do to grab attention in Web3, we're doing all those things. But we do that because it's fun and because we love the Web3 part of the game. But in terms of growth, Web2 is our growth plan. Like just doing the boring, repeatable, predictable, scalable type of activities. And so we get to play both games. I think if you're a Web3 game, you have to play those Web3 games. Unless you intend to have, 10, 15, 20, 30,000 daily actives, then that's what you're happy with. But if you want to reach 6 figures or 7 figures of daily actives, you've got to be able to play the Web2 games. Right. Or you've got to be able to have that Web2 scalability and do it at an incredibly high level.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here at Upptic, like about half our partners are Web3 games of some capacity and half are traditional. And the concept of scale in these two ecosystems is just like so wildly different. And I know you guys have good reads on both, but it's like, there's probably at least top 10, maybe even top 5, like Web3 games by DAU. Like our biggest game today, this is not to brag, it's just for comparison. It's like, we acquire that scale literally every day. And like the scale is just so different once you open up those opportunities. Like, I don't want to make your ego too big, Corey, but that's one reason that we followed and supported your team, is you guys have always had one eye firmly on how do we have a mass market strategy in both game design and go to market.
The way that our game is currently structured, like as a Web3 game, because of these limitations that we put on, the single token, the fixed supply, deflationary, a lot of these kind of player-to-player mechanics, I don't know that we could onboard 30,000 players a day right now, right? Like the game can't support it. And so the Web3 game has a different, what I would say for us, a different definition of success. If you look at Axie, when they had 2 million daily actives, that put Web3 gaming on the map. It helped them reach a $10 billion market cap. It did all these great things. it was also probably the exact reason that they couldn't sustain that economy, because Web3 games, just because of the limitations that need to exist to be successful, probably aren't looking to bring in 1 million, 2 million, 10 million, 50 million daily actives like Candy Crush can, right? So the objectives or the definitions of success are radically different. And so I think for us, it's about predictably going out and growing it much larger than most Web3 games, but not necessarily trying to reach the scale or success of Web2 games in that capacity.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think there's a lot of value. One of the things I'll harp on is just the value of the novelty of being able to own the game pieces. And at the end of the day, anyone here, we're all just trying to build successful businesses. And this might seem like a completely random tangent, but I was reading some analysis today talking about Monopoly Go. And that was one of the big success stories across gaming, and essentially like game of the year from a growth standpoint and scale standpoint for last year. Now there's a lot of talks and analysis of like, wait, is this actually a profitable endeavor? And we have no inside information here, but there's a lot of analysis that says actually, as successful as this seems, they may be burning more in cash each day than they make. We're probably not going to find that out anytime soon, but there's been estimates made that they're spending, in the $2 to $3 million range. Shout out to Joseph Kim and Mate, who, both were doing some discussions around this. But that's all to say, they're competing in the biggest arena. And even though it's viewed from the outside as this is a huge hit, it may be struggling to be above break even as far as like a sustainable and profitable business. I think the opportunity for a lot of the more innovative teams like Honeyland is to carve these lanes and work with some of the novelty and innovation that Web3 gives us, to where you might not beat Monopoly Go in the charts next month. I hope you do, but you might not. But you may carve a very sustainable lane for you because you're taking a lane that these bigger companies are going to take longer to move into.
That's exactly right. It's funny. We'll go back to my coaching days. Every time we get in for annual planning every year, and you look at every business and they're doing 25 million in revenue this year, right? And you go, great, what does your business look like in 3 years? There's very few businesses that say, I want to be doing 25 million or 20 million in 3 years. All of them have this wild number of, we're going to be doing 50 million or 70 million. And I feel like what people fail to realize is that doubling or tripling in size isn't always the best thing to do. Sometimes profits start to erode. Sometimes culture starts to erode. There's an erosion of assets at the same time that there's growth. And so I think it's really about focusing on like, where do you reach peak efficiency for a business in terms of the culture, the business, the community, the gameplay, that the profits for the studio that allow you to go do more. And so I don't think for us, it's just about getting to 1 million daily actives. That would be really sexy to say. It'd be a lot of fun, but I don't think that's where we're healthiest. I think we're healthiest over the next year, certainly in the 5 figures of daily actives. If we're only in 4 figures, we've done something wildly wrong. I think if we're at 150,000, we're probably balancing on this idea of like, how sustainable or where are we going to break first? Too many things could break that we haven't necessarily accounted for. Not like from a performance standpoint or things like that, just like the ecosystem wasn't designed to have 150,000 players when we only have 2 universes live, right? And so like, we need to basically grow based on sanity, not vanity. This is a shout out Steve Woody. I remember this one thing that he told me. He goes, you can have sanity numbers or vanity numbers, and different projects want different things. I really want to grow to these sanity numbers, things that are done in a way that's really, really healthy for the game, the project, the community, the ecosystem, and the assets involved.
Corey, just before we wrap, is there anything else on your roadmap or any key beats that you're really excited for that you want to give a shout out to the audience to keep an eye out for?
Yeah, so I'll give you guys early alpha because this will release by the time this is live, but we have a web version of our game going live, which will be really, really fun. So the mobile version, you can do everything. The web app is a little bit lighter, but you can send all your missions, manage your beasts throughout the day. So for those people who are playing at work and their boss hates it, they can now do it in a lot more secrecy because it can just be tucked behind a tab. We'll have staking going live. We're really focused on 2 big goals for the project. Make sure that we have enough daily trading volume to support any movement in or out of the ecosystem without it being noticed, right? And that's both with our NFTs, like the marketplace stuff that we've done, but also our token, because I want this to be really, really healthy. And then make sure that the assets have more value tomorrow than they have today, so that while you can move them into the ecosystem or there's daily trading volume to kind of support that you may not want to unless you need to, because you feel like they're going to have more value tomorrow. And so that's kind of what I'm thinking at a high level, and doing this in a really, really predictable way. But token staking is something that'll be a really important part of that, I think. We'll have some really, really cool, thoughtful, as you might imagine, incentive programs to make sure that it's designed in a way that's really, really healthy, give it a fixed supply, deflationary token, and all that type of stuff. And then we're moving toward hopefully centralized exchange listing. We're starting that conversation already, which I think will really support that as well. And then from the gameplay side, it's all about making the player the hero this year. We have put a ton of like really, really sound mechanics in place. You have a tutorial and all the staking and breeding and missions and all that stuff, but we haven't focused enough on making the player the hero. And so this year is really about giving you ways to acknowledge and celebrate your achievements and growth and progress in the game, to share that and flex that in front of other players, to compete at a higher level against other players through things like leaderboards and reward incentives and badges and all that stuff. So I think there's a lot of really, really cool things that we'll be doing on the player experience that makes the player feel more fun and feel a little bit less mechanical in terms of what we're doing. So I'd say those are the beats that we're trying to hit on at a high level here.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us on the podcast. Really appreciated your perspective. I think it was a good conversation that spanned quite a bit.
Yeah. And Corey, if people want to learn more about Honeyland, where is the best place for them to start?
Yeah. So honey.land is our website. And then, of course, like I said, you can find us in Google Play or Apple Store anywhere in the world. So go search Honeyland, download, start playing. Super easy onboarding. You'll be playing in minutes and picking up all the mechanics. And then if you're Web3, we've got our Discord, but we try and really cater to more of a Web2 audience. So I do a lot of like in-game announcements and videos. We write Medium articles and things like that. So you don't have to be a Web3 degen to participate in our community and get all those updates and stuff. But you certainly can. Discord's a really, really fun place to kind of play another part of the game, which is the community part of the game also.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us today, Corey. As always, the podcast was brought to you by our team here at Upptic. Here at Upptic, we do all things to help games grow, traditional user acquisition, Web3 native growth, creative data analysis, and we build some really awesome software that supports and automates all of that. So if we can help your game grow and you're building something super cool, reach out to us through our website. That's upptic.com. That's upptic.com.
Talk soon.